League of Women Voters of Cupertino Sunnyvale presents the Santa Clara County District Attorney and Santa Clara County Sheriff Candidates Forum. And now for tonight's moderator, Elaine Manley.
Great. Well, welcome to our Candidates Forum. In the first hour, we will hear from the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office candidates. In the second hour, we'll get to hear from the candidates for the Sheriff's Office. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Cupertino and Sunnyvale, and I'm Elaine Manley from the League, and I'll be the moderator this evening. I do want to mention that the League is a nationwide nonpartisan organization, so therefore we never support or oppose candidates. Our purpose is to help make an informed electorate, and we are glad that you're here and participating in this forum. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, June 8th. So this evening, the candidates have agreed to a set of ground rules, and we have our timekeeper, Suzanne Ford, here in front. She'll let you know how much time is remaining. The format is opening statements for 2 minutes. Then we ask the audience if they will please write down their questions on the cards. Just raise your hand and someone will bring a card to you. Please write legibly so I can read the question, and try to do one question per card. We have plenty of cards. The question collectors will gather those, and the candidates will have a minute and a half to answer the questions. Around 7:50, we'll have the candidates give a 2-minute closing statement. So now we're going to hear from our candidates for Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, and we have Delores Carr and Jeff Rosen joining us today. I did want to just briefly read what's on the website for the District Attorney. I thought this was interesting. It says, "We in the District Attorney's Office are making every effort to achieve the lowest crime rate reasonably possible while emphasizing the prosecution of violent crime. We want to make this community a safe place for you and your family." So let's begin with those opening statements. You have up to 2 minutes, and we will start with Delores Carr.
Thank you very much, Elaine, and good evening, and thank you very much for being here. On June 8th, you're going to make a decision on who you think is best qualified and experienced to keep our community safe. I've been honored to be your district attorney for the last 3.5 years, and I'm looking to continue the good work we've done over the next 4 years as well. When I took office in 2007, I inherited a number of issues. I inherited a budget deficit of $3.5 million. I inherited a culture that some said prized winning over justice. I also saw a lack of organizational development in our managers. So on top of the basic job of the district attorney, as Elaine said, which is to keep our community safe by taking criminals off the street, I have an $85 million budget, 45,000 cases that come through every year, and I manage almost 500 employees, including the crime lab. We've done a great job in keeping our gang violence rate low. The homicide rate in the city of San Jose for gang violence, and it was consistent across the county, was spiking in 2007. We aggressively prosecute gang crime, but we also work in the area of prevention. And I hope you'll take a look at our website and look at the Parent Project, which I implemented in Santa Clara County. But I also focused on our operations. I've cut $11.7 million from our budget these first 3 years, and it's been a struggle to keep our service levels high, but we've done a good job at that so that we can continue to handle the thousands of cases that come through this year. So I think when you come and look at your ballot statement, which is very important to compare the candidates, you're going to see that I am the most experienced and the most qualified to keep our community and you and your families safe. And I would appreciate your vote on June 8th.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Cupertino and Sunnyvale for hosting this event. I want to thank all of you for coming out. I'm running for district attorney because I'm passionate about pursuing justice in a way that treats everyone equally and fairly and with respect. I have very broad support in my run for district attorney. The retired district attorney George Kennedy has endorsed me, as has every newspaper that is endorsed in this race, from the north end of the county to the south end of the county, has endorsed me for district attorney. I'm endorsed by more prosecutors in the district attorney's office than Ms. Carr, which is stunning when you consider the fact that, of course, Ms. Carr has a lot of influence over the careers of prosecutors in our office, and yet more of them are publicly endorsing me for district attorney. Why is that? Why? Because I'm experienced, tough, and fair. I've been a lawyer for 17 years and a prosecutor for 15 years. I'm tough. I've prosecuted the most controversial, high-profile, and difficult cases in our county, including rape, child molestation, and murder. And I'm fair. I have a very high conviction rate, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm also very proud of the cases where I've reduced charges or dismissed charges because that was justice. And that's why I have such broad support from not only prosecutors, but from public defenders and other criminal defense lawyers. We need change. There's a concern in our community about the ethics in the leadership of the district attorney, and that has been exemplified in the Santa Clara County Bar Association voting the sitting district attorney not qualified for the first time in history. So just let that sink in for a moment. What am I going to do? Cold case unit to take care of unsolved murders, conviction integrity unit to make sure our convictions are solid, open discovery to ensure that defense attorneys have what they're entitled to, supervisors carrying a small caseload to make sure they're in touch with what goes on in court. When you elect me as district attorney, I will serve this community with hard work, good judgment, integrity, and humility, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to have time for questions. Remember, please write your questions on the card, raise your hand, and someone will be by to pick up those questions. I'll do my best to get to all of them this evening. You each have a minute and a half, and we will start with Jeff Rosen. The question reads, what would your office policy be regarding charging juveniles in adult court?
We will be very careful about whether to charge juveniles as adults. The factors that we will look at are the age of the child, the seriousness of the offense, and any prior record. So the younger the child is, the less serious the offense is, they're going to be treated in juvenile court. But as that child gets older, 15, 16, 17 years old, and if the crimes continue to get worse and worse, then we're going to consider charging that child as an adult because they become a threat to the community. You see, in juvenile court, we're balancing rehabilitation of the minor, which is what we're really focused on. But at some point, we have to look at safety of the community. And I have prosecuted cases where we've treated a juvenile as an adult. It's very rare, and the crimes are generally murder or a violent sexual assault, and the juvenile would be 16, 17, or 18 years old. So it's certainly a balance. The emphasis is to try to rehabilitate the juvenile and try to get him or her to change their ways and become productive members of society. But the number one responsibility of the district attorney is public safety, and I won't hesitate to protect the community if that juvenile becomes a threat to it.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
Well, of course, I have been in the position in the last 3.5 years as your district attorney to make that decision. So I'm not just talking about what I would do. Let's talk about what I have done. And what I have done is to look at the cases that come into our juvenile arena where there are very, very violent crimes. And I have a senior staff, number of staff members, our senior lawyers, who supervise the juvenile justice court. And when one of those cases come in, we have a supervisor and an assistant district attorney, and often the chief assistant and myself really talk about whether or not the balance in accountability and public safety is outweighed by the chances and the probabilities that the minor can be rehabilitated. Because again, we want to focus on juveniles in rehabilitation, but there comes time when there have been murders, and I have charged teenagers, 16, 17-year-olds with murder. There's a case in Santa Teresa in San Jose where it was a very brutal murder, but we take a look at the facts of the case, the background of the juveniles, the chances and the probabilities of rehabilitation versus public safety. So I have made those difficult decisions. They are about the most serious ones we can make. And I am a mother myself, and so I understand the seriousness of that. But again, we make the decisions based on public safety versus rehabilitation.
Thank you. All right, for the next question, we'll start with Delores Carr, and this question reads, are there any businesses or groups of people from which you would refuse a campaign contribution, and why?
Yes, actually, there are a couple of groups, and I made that a policy when I ran first for election to be a Superior Court judge in 1999, and then maintained that policy in 2006 and, of course, maintain it today. So, number one, I don't take money from gambling interests, not because they're not legal, but because I think it really is a conflict in terms of that type of arena. But bail bonds companies are kind of a set of businesses that I have made it a policy not to take money from. Not, again, because they're not legitimate and have a place in our criminal justice system, but the DA goes in and argues every day on how much the bail should be for criminals or people accused of crime who are in custody. The higher the bail, the more money the bail bonds person makes. So I think it's just a conflict for us to be arguing on the amount of bail when one has taken money from bail bonds people, so I've made it a policy not to do that. Now, my opponent said that I did at a forum, but he's realized that he made a mistake and has retracted that statement. So I submit that it is a conflict of interest to take money from bail bonds, and that's my policy not to do it.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
Bail bonds companies are licensed and regulated by the state of California. Individuals have a constitutional right to bail, and the court sets bail. Criminal defense attorneys are licensed and regulated by the state as well, and both of us accept money from criminal defense attorneys. The issue is not who you're accepting money from. The issue is whether you're doing favors for those campaign contributors. Unfortunately, and I mean that, unfortunately and sadly, this district attorney did a favor for a campaign contributor and intervened on that campaign contributor's client's behalf and lowered the offer on a case in violation of her own policies. The conduct was so serious that the local news, Channel 7, ran a story about it asking, "Is justice for sale in Santa Clara County?" When I'm the district attorney, justice will not be for sale. There will be one standard of justice for everyone, whether they're represented by a politically connected campaign contributor or whether they're represented by a legal aid lawyer or the public defender. One standard of justice for all. She's done a favor for a campaign contributor's client. I have never done that, and I will never, ever do that.
Thank you. All right, our next question, we will start with Jeff Rosen, and this question is, list your experience with working with unions.
Yes. When I came to the district attorney's office, we had a government attorneys association union, and actually Ms. Carr and I interviewed a number of candidates for board of supervisor positions. This was back in the late 1990s. And that was an interesting experience to meet the supervisor candidates and find out what their issues were and how those impacted our union. So that's one way that I've been involved with unions. In addition to that, sort of outside of the district attorney's office, I've negotiated a number of contracts. I've hired and fired. I was the president of a large nonprofit institution in Palo Alto. It was my temple. We have 1,500 members, 20 full-time employees, and a budget of $1.5 million a year. As part of being president, I hired and unfortunately had to fire employees. I supervised the writing of a personnel manual, and I negotiated and wrote all of the contracts. And what I learned from that experience was that the temple, like the district attorney's office, both organizations want to do more than they can afford. And so one must set budgetary priorities. My budgetary priorities as district attorney will be focusing on public safety and the integrity of our convictions. My focus will not be public relations and hiring press information officers at the expense of investigators and criminalists. I have a different approach than Ms. Carr about that.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
Thank you. And I think it's very important to listen to whether or not my opponent answers actually the question. The reason he didn't really spend much time is he really doesn't have any experience with labor unions. I was the labor union president for the public defenders and the district attorneys from 1994 to 1999. I don't recall Mr. Rosen on any negotiating team that I was on for those 5 years or being involved in any of those interviews. But be that as it may, what being the president of the organization taught me was personnel issues from an employee standpoint. And that's helped as I became the district attorney and have to manage personnel issues. So I put processes into place that are in writing and fair for our employees when they look at discipline. But I've also looked at it from a negotiation standpoint because I had to negotiate contracts with the county as the labor union president with my negotiation team. So that experience has really helped me in looking at issues from the other side. I want to take one last second to say that I did not do a favor for a campaign contributor. My opponent continues to say that. I urge you to look at my website and see Setting the Record Straight so that you can see the truth about how justice was done for an 18-year-old kid who made a mistake in stealing a computer, and the outcome that happened was one that did not ruin that young person's life for making a stupid mistake.
Thank you. Okay, the next question, we will start with Delores Carr, and this one is, what is your policy on bringing elder abuse cases to indictments after you receive the proper evidence from local law enforcement agencies?
Well, I'm very proud to tell you that we have a very active and dedicated staff on the issues of elder abuse and fraud, and that's both criminal, physical abuse as well as financial abuse, because as our population has gotten older, we see more crimes in that regard. And in fact, I go out to senior centers on a regular basis, as do my staff members, to talk to them about the importance of protecting themselves. So we have a FAST team in Santa Clara County, and in fact, for Victims of Crime, National Victims of Crime Week, we focused on our efforts in that regard because we work together in a collaborative manner with the County Counsel's Office, with Adult and Aging Services, with Adult Protective Services, to make sure that we all work together with the two attorneys in my office as well as our investigator to really focus on case reviews, to be able to go in very quickly on, especially on financial fraud cases, and actually freeze assets before the elder loses their home or their bank account. I'm proud to say that now bank tellers are mandatory reporters. We back that legislation, and it's very important, and I'm very committed, and we've done a very good job in the DA's office at making sure that we respond appropriately and quickly to the issue of elder fraud. We thought we were going to lose our second attorney during the budget cuts, but I was able to convince the Board of Supervisors to keep both of those positions.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
One of the first cases that I prosecuted in the district attorney's office was an older woman that was pumping gas at a gas station, and the guy behind her thought she was taking too long. And as she got into her car before she drove away, this man walked up to her, spit on her, and pounded on the hood of her car. She drove to the police department. She took off her glasses and gave them to the police department as evidence because there was spit on her glasses. And I got this case. This was one of the first cases that I handled in the district attorney's office. And I was so passionate about getting justice for this woman. This could have been my mother, my aunt, my grandmother. And I take that same kind of passion to every case that I prosecute, whether it's something as relatively minor as being spit upon, which if you're spit on you wouldn't like, or something like rape or child molestation or murder. So certainly I'm very sensitive to crimes against the elderly. Kim Connors, who runs our elder fraud unit in the district attorney's office, is endorsing me for district attorney, and I will take the crimes against elderly very seriously. You know, it says in the Bible, don't curse the deaf, and don't put stumbling blocks in front of the blind. When someone gets older and they lose their hearing, they lose their sight, they lose their faculties, they often are a target as a victim. And that's not something that I'm going to let happen. We're going to aggressively prosecute that.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will start with Jeff Rosen, and this one reads, will you staff and or reestablish a cold case division?
Yes, absolutely. We used to have a cold case unit in the district attorney's office which looked at unsolved murder cases and tried to solve them. We have over 300 unsolved murder cases in this county, and if you count unsolved rapes and violence assaults, it's in the thousands. with the advent of DNA technology, we can look at physical evidence from crime scenes 15, 20 years ago, a bed sheet, a shirt, a mug, and we can examine that for DNA evidence and get a suspect and a lead and a prosecution. I've prosecuted cold cases. I've seen the closure, the relief that it brings those victims' families to know what happened to their son, their daughter, their father, their mother. And to me, there's of course no statute of limitations on murder, because murder is the ultimate crime. When you kill someone, it's like you've killed an entire world. And that's something that I take extremely seriously. Sadly, when this district attorney came into office, she cut our cold case unit and said, well, we don't have enough money. But at the same time, she hired 2 public relations staffers that cost the taxpayers $260,000 a year. My focus will be public safety and not public relations. I will reestablish a cold case unit to bring closure to those victims' families and safety to our community so we don't have murderers walking amongst us.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
Well, we had a cold case unit in the office for about 3 years before I became the DA. We used to have 15 community prosecutors as well across the county, but we had to make some difficult decisions in cutting $11.7 million, or actually $5 million in my first go-round as the DA in 2007. And it's important to understand that in police work, police investigate crimes, we prosecute crimes. So it was great and a great service when we could have one attorney, because that's what my opponent is talking about, one attorney who had a full-time job of helping an investigator who was doing that job anyway. We still have those cold cases being investigated by our investigative bureau in our office. San Jose PD has a whole unit. The SO has, the sheriff's office has a whole unit. So yes, those cases are important, but when we have to get down to our core basics because of budget, just like you do, when your budget gets tight, you get rid of some of the extra things you really think are important but can no longer afford to do. But I also think having a public information officer to give information to our local media, to our community, because they do community outreach as well, is also important. Rather than spending $250,000 on a lawyer to do public information officer work, we spend half of that for our public information officers. So it's really about having the right person in the right job.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will be with Delores Carr, and this one is, what is your position on the death penalty?
Well, the death penalty is the law in the state of California, and it is my job as the district attorney to enforce the law. And so one of the things that I did when I came into office was to revise our capital case protocol and put it in writing and actually take it over to the public defender's office and share it with them. Because before I took office, they thought it was a mystery to them as to how we made that decision. So we have a committee in the DA's office made up of senior lawyers, and the lawyer who is assigned to the homicide makes a presentation to that committee. Now, my opponent's going to tell you that I don't sit in that discussion, and he's absolutely correct, and that's the way the protocol was set up, because I believe it is a more free flow of conversation and discussion to have those lawyers there without me. And then I weigh in at, after the recommendation is given by the committee to the homicide assistant who comes and talks to me. I then look at the presentation, discuss the case, discuss it with the trial attorney if necessary. Usually there are unanimous recommendations, and I have made the decision, which is mine, and I have made that, to charge someone with murder and to seek the death penalty. Again, it's one of the most, if not the most serious decisions that a district attorney has to make, and I have made that decision in the worst of the worst of the worst cases. Unfortunately, we don't have very many homicides in Santa Clara County where I have to do that.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
So just so we understand, the district attorney's office handles about 45,000 cases a year. When a lawyer that raised thousands and thousands of dollars for Ms. Carr called her to get the offer lowered on a theft case, Ms. Carr responded and talked to the lawyer assigned to that case and got it lowered. But on the 5 or 6 cases a year where we're deciding whether or not to seek the death penalty, Ms. Carr is not present when that presentation is made. What is more important than hearing firsthand the information about whether we're going to seek the death penalty or not. Now, whatever your views about the death penalty, and I know people feel strongly on both sides of this issue, I think everyone would agree that they would want the elected district attorney to be intimately involved with that decision. Unfortunately, this is the first district attorney in the history of Santa Clara County who's never handled a murder case. I've prosecuted murder cases. I'm currently prosecuting a death penalty case, and I've prosecuted other cases where we could have sought death and we decided not to. I have that experience and that firsthand knowledge. And my management approach is not one where the people that work with me are going to be afraid to speak in front of me or afraid to disagree with me. I don't take disagreement as disloyalty. And that's why I find it striking that the district attorney will intervene on a theft case but doesn't want to be directly involved in a potential death penalty case. I will be.
Thank you. All right, our next question, we'll start with Jeff Rosen. What is the worst mistake you have made in your career, and what have you done to prevent reoccurrence?
About 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, maybe 12 years ago, I was in a trial, and this defense attorney was really kind of bothering me and just kind of annoying me and getting under my skin, and he was a little bit sort of slow and didn't get what we needed to do. And I started to get more frustrated as the trial went on. And at one point when we were on a break and we were talking to the judge, I said to this defense attorney, you're not a very smart person. Okay? And let's just say I didn't use those words. So I used the words that you can imagine I used. And as soon as I said that, I saw this man, his face sort of turned white, and I could tell that I just sort of cut him to the quick, and that he felt really bad about what I'd said, that I'd really hurt him. And the next day, I went up to him and I said, I'm sorry. I said that. I should not have said that. It was totally out of line. Please forgive me. And he said, I forgive you. And I've never made that mistake again. And you know, I learned from that, and I try to treat everyone in court with respect, whether it's the defendant, the victim, the defense attorney, or the court. And I think that's why I have such broad support from all of those groups in my run for district attorney.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
Well, I would not, in hindsight, have approved my husband's working as a security consultant on a civil lawsuit involving the family of a man who was murdered in a bank parking lot. In that particular case, the family sued the bank because they said the bank failed to have adequate security measures, and the civil lawyer hired my husband to help him analyze the bank's security measures that they had in place at the time. My analysis when I looked at his involvement in that case was that whether or not that his working on it was independent of whether or not anyone was ever caught on that murder case or even ever convicted on that murder case. What I learned was when it comes to making a decision where it involves my family, intersecting in my job, that I have to take the extra time to really analyze far enough down the road to see what the implications might be. And in this particular case, I did not see far enough down the road to see the issues. But I think it's important to acknowledge one's errors, to learn from them, and to make sure they don't happen again. And we put something into place to make sure that happens. But what I tell my lawyers, folks, is everybody makes mistakes. Everyone is going to make them, and that they should not be career-ending unless you lie about them. And I think it's helped me be a better manager, to make sure that people are not afraid of making a mistake.
Thank you. Okay, this next question, we will start with Delores Carr, and this question reads, what have you done in your career before this election to prepare yourself to lead a government agency with nearly 500 employees?
I've been a lawyer 30 years. I was in private practice for about 5 years. I was then a deputy district attorney in this office for 15. I've already talked about my labor and personnel experience from the employee side as the Government Attorneys Association president. I also was the supervisor of the sexual assault unit, where I charged all of the sexual assault crimes that occurred in the county for a period of 2 years. I also supervised the senior lawyers who tried the sexual assault cases as well. I then was a Superior Court judge for almost 6 years, practicing for 5. And in that job, I was assigned to be the supervising judge of the family division. I was in charge of the family law courthouse and the child support courthouse at the Notre Dame facility. I was in charge of the clerk's office. I was in charge of family court services, the mental health professionals who work there. I was in charge of the lawyers who help unrepresented parties. I worked on the budget committee for the court, as well as many other committees involving personnel. I wrote evaluations for the court commissioners. And then, of course, I've been the district attorney now for 3.5 years, actually doing the job, making the decisions, balancing the budget, making difficult personnel decisions, and really organizing our management stream better, making sure we have more accountability from top to bottom. So I have a lot of experience in my 30 years in management.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
I did my undergraduate work at UCLA, where I graduated Phi Beta Kappa. I then went to the University of California Law School at Berkeley, Bolt Hall School of Law, where I met my wife, Amber, who's also an attorney. That was the best part of law school. After law school, I worked for 2 years in private practice at a large law firm in Los Angeles and a law firm in Washington, D.C., doing different kinds of business litigation, entertainment litigation, healthcare-related litigation, and First Amendment work. I came to the district attorney's office in 1995, and during the 15 years that I've been at the district attorney's office, I've prosecuted just about every kind of serious case you can prosecute: drug trafficking, murder, rape, child molestation, gang violence. In addition to that, I've written hundreds of search warrants. None of the search warrants I've written have ever been overturned or suppressed. I've gone out with police officers to crime scenes on multiple occasions, and I've gone to state prisons to argue at parole hearings about whether a prisoner should be released. I know the office. This job as district attorney, this is not about management and administration. It's about leadership, integrity, and ethics. Management and administration are skills that you can learn. Integrity and ethics are qualities that you have or you don't. That's why we need a change in the district attorney's office.
Thank you. Our next question, we will start with Jeff Rosen, and this question reads, with the demographic changes in Santa Clara County in the recent years, what's your vision or plan to cope with them?
I take it by demographic changes we're talking ethnically or age, or
it
just
doesn't say.
Doesn't say. Okay. We have an incredibly diverse county. That's one of the reasons it's such a wonderful place to live, because there's the brightest people here have come here from all over the world to create these wonderful technologies that we enjoy. One of the things that we need to do in the district attorney's office is to make sure, number one, that our office reflects the diversity of this valley, the diversity in terms of ethnicity of this valley. We're getting there. We're not there yet. We need to take more proactive steps to do that. Secondly, we need to have our information available in multiple languages. We have a victim witness form, a little pamphlet that goes to everyone that's subpoenaed in a criminal case, and that's thousands of individuals a year. Unfortunately, it's only available in English, and we've asked many times people in the office to have this translated into other languages. I think at this point the district attorney is working on it, but essentially it's because we're in an election and that's why it's being worked on. So I want to make sure that people are spoken to and get information in the language that they are most comfortable in. So I'm certainly going to continue to do outreach to those communities and to make sure that we have an organization that reflects the diversity of this valley.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
Well, first of all, my opponent has now made a second false statement of this particular forum. There were 3 the other evening. The false statement that he's made is that this material that he's talking about has not been translated into other languages. That's absolutely not true. I think he's talking about a particular pamphlet that we were out of print on, and that was at the printers. That has already been translated, and we have many of our materials in other languages, because I'm very committed to diversity, and having our materials in other languages is very important. And as a matter of fact, you'll see one of my fact sheets out on the table in Chinese. We also have them in Korean and Vietnamese, and have our website in other languages as well. And I'm also honored to have the endorsements of the Korean American Bar Association, the Vietnamese American Bar Association of Northern California, and also the Asian Pacific Bar Association of Silicon Valley. But yes, we still need to do a better job. I'm revamping our intern program as we speak to make sure that we have a broader base of law students that come in. That's something that will help us increase the number of lawyers in our office. But we've done a pretty good job of hiring diverse lawyers and investigators, and we have a very high diversity of staff. But we can always do a better job, because I do think it is very important to reflect the diversity of our community, and we've also engaged in training for cross-cultural competency.
Thank you. All right, our next question will start with Delores Carr, and this reads, do you support sending nonviolent drug offenders to state prison? Why or why not?
Well, it depends on the case, because it's very difficult to be sentenced to state prison only for you. First of all, you can't do it only for using drugs. Now, one can be sentenced to state prison if one is in possession of drugs or is selling or possesses for sale drugs. But it usually entails other conduct as well. And so we look at every case on a case-by-case basis. So if someone commits a robbery, and especially with a firearm, and also possesses drugs, that's probably going to be shipped to prison based on the robbery and not the drugs. Sometimes multiple offenders fail probation numerous times, and then the recommendation often is to go to state prison. So again, in and of itself, just for a drug addiction, those are probably not going to go to state prison. We also have drug court, and so and Prop 36, and so these are laws that the community passed that make sure we focus on treatment and rehabilitation of our drug offenders, our addicts, both alcohol and drugs. And so most of the crimes that we see are, if you're Prop 36 eligible, you go to that court, and you're really out of the regular criminal mix.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
For drug addicts, treatment. For drug traffickers, prison. If someone simply possesses drugs and they're not hurting anyone else, they're not committing violence, they're not stealing from anyone, they're just possessing drugs, then the emphasis will be treatment. And we will only use jail or the threat of incarceration as a way of encouraging that person to get sober and get clean. So we use the threat of jail as a negative reinforcement to keep the person clean and sober, and put them in jail for 20, 30 days, let them out, go back to your sober living environment, go to your 12-step program. For addicts, that's the way we should deal with them. For individuals that are selling drugs, I don't have that kind of sympathy. You're selling drugs, you're spreading that in the community, you're ruining other people's lives. That's going to be taken much more seriously. That's jail or prison, depending on how serious the drug dealing is. I've prosecuted drug traffickers in my career, drug traffickers stretching from here into Mexico, importing the drugs into this county, and it's a serious threat, and I will aggressively prosecute that. In terms of medical marijuana, that's the law in this state, and I will enforce it. If individuals have a card to get medical marijuana and the dispensary is operating according to the requirements of Prop 215, that's fine. We just want to make sure that they're really giving the marijuana to people that have a legitimate need for it.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll start with Jeff Rosen, and the question is about the current budget deficit. Please address what the deficit is and what is your plan to improve the financial situation?
Well, my plan to improve the financial situation is for everyone to go out and spend money and buy products and, create more revenue for the government. In terms of the current budget deficit, the district attorney has presented a budget to cut approximately $4 million, and a lot of those cuts come from a lot of the ways that those revenues are made up is by taking money from one fund and moving it into another fund, sort of one-off kinds of proposals. And the fact is, I've read over the budget that the district attorney has presented, and I don't disagree with it. I don't just disagree with her for the sake of doing that. there may be structural changes that we have to make in the district attorney's office if this economy continues this way for another 3, 4, or 5 years. But in the meantime, I do think it's a sensible thing to try to use one-time funds to preserve the level of services that we have, because there's a value in preserving those services. There's a value in prosecuting the cases that we're prosecuting and putting off for a year or 2 years potential structural changes, as long as we're not making things worse. And the way as attorneys retire, we're not going to backfill those positions. We're going to try to have volunteer attorneys handle more misdemeanor calendars. We're going to try to do more with less for as long as we can and hold on until the economy turns around, just as other businesses do.
Thank you. Delores Carr?
Well, again, instead of talking about things in the abstract, I've actually had to make those tough decisions. As I indicated at the outset, I had a $3.5 million deficit left by my predecessor. I then, overall, these past 3.5 years have cut $11.7 million. I have an $85 million budget at this point. But one of the first things I did to deal with that is I asked for an outside audit, and the Board of Supervisors ordered that. I found out there'd never been one before of my operation, of my office, and that was very helpful to have outside people come in and look at our operations and help us figure out where we should focus our efforts to become more efficient and more effective. In addition, it's very important to have good relationships with the Board of Supervisors, because although I'm an independent elected official, the Board of Supervisors controls the budget and tells me and every other department how much money we have to spend. So I'm proud to have all of the endorsements of the Board of Supervisors members who have made endorsements in this race: Cortese, Shirakawa, and Gage. And what they will tell you is that I've been a responsible department head. I've made the difficult decisions of actually cutting the budget, but making sure that we can keep our service levels high, which means that we are there prosecuting cases, appearing in court, and actually coming up with ideas on how we can streamline things. It may not be popular, but I think the court will close the Sunnyvale facility, and that will save us some money as well.
Thank you. All right. Our next question, we'll start with Delores Carr. What options are there to boycotting a judge, as was done by the DA's office?
Well, let me tell you about that, what happened in that case. Actually, the decision I made, in consultation with my senior staff, was to stop taking our cases to this particular judge. But it was not because of one case. If it had been just the one case, we may not have done that. But that one case is important because it was a child molester who'd been convicted of molesting his granddaughter, convicted by a jury, sentenced to prison. The case was reversed by the Court of Appeal, sent back for a new trial, another trial, because there was evidence not available to either side for the first trial. After the motions were heard, this judge said that she was not going to have another trial, but dismissed the case entirely and let this man out of prison. She did it on the basis that the lawyer who had handled the case from my office had lied, but had lied about stuff that happened long after the first trial. The Attorney General agrees with us that she exceeded her legal authority, and the AG is appealing on our behalf. But we'd had this judge in this particular department for 3 years, and we had a number of decisions we felt were unfair and that we were not getting a fair shake on our cases. And as the DA who represents each and every one of you, residents of Santa Clara County, my oath of office is to make sure that your cases, if you should have one, unfortunately, get a fair trial. Now, I could have waited until June 9th, but I didn't.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
This is a good example of a difference between the district attorney and I. This is something that she calls a tough decision. This was not a tough decision. This was the wrong decision. In this country, we have a system of checks and balances between the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And we have a microcosm of that in our criminal justice system. Judges have certain powers, prosecutors have certain powers, defense attorneys have certain powers. And when the district attorney takes the extreme tactic of blackballing a criminal judge and saying we're not going to bring any criminal cases in front of that judge, That's basically taking, as one expert said, it's turning the scalpel of recusal into a chainsaw to undermine judicial independence. And we know that Ms. Carr made the wrong decision by her own actions. After she was broadly criticized in the San Jose Mercury News, in the New York Times, in the Pittsburgh Gazette, by nearly everyone in the legal community, she then waffled and changed and said, oh, now we'll take misdemeanor cases there. And then as she was saying, we'll take misdemeanor cases there, prosecutors in her own office were still challenging the judge on misdemeanor cases. The right hand did not know what the left hand was doing. When you make a bad decision, you waffle and you change course, and that's something that she should not have done. And the fact that she has a right to do that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. I will respect judges and respect the independence of the judiciary because that is essential to our democratic form of government.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will start with Jeff Rosen. How do you plan to run the office based on your experience as a manager, leader, or supervisor?
When I'm elected the district attorney, the first thing that I'm going to do, and it will probably take 4 to 5 months for me to do this, is I'm going to have a conversation with every prosecutor in the office. 5 to 10 minute conversation. What are we doing well? What could we be doing better? What are your personal goals as a prosecutor? What are you looking to get out of this job? And then, without saying something negative about your current supervisor, who's somebody that you think might be a good supervisor that I might not be aware of? I've worked in the district attorney's office for 15 years, and I know everyone pretty well, but nonetheless, I want to learn the organization from the bottom up, and I want to get input from everyone. This district attorney likes to talk about a chain of command and people 4 or 5 levels below her. When I'm the district attorney, you will never hear me say that someone is 4 levels below me, because leadership is not a chain of command where you tell people what to do. Leadership is service. Leadership within the district attorney's office means creating an environment in which everyone can do their best work. And the people that know me best in the district attorney's office, my fellow prosecutors, more of them are publicly endorsing me for district attorney than the current DA. As my daughter said to me, I have 2 daughters, 9 and 11. The 11-year-old said, why can't the election just be amongst the people in the office? Then you'd win for sure. That's true, and that's why you should have confidence in my ability to lead the office, because the people I work with do.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
Well, anyone who has been in business or has worked in an organization where accountability is one of the top priorities, then you realize that being a leader is not a popularity contest, because we have a business and an important business to run. And so it's not about being popular, it's about setting expectations and holding people accountable. So let me tell you a few things that I've done since I became the DA in that regard. First, I invested in organizational development for our top 30 managers because they'd never had any before. We never, or my predecessor that is, never had any training for supervisors. I implemented a new hiring policy, both for our investigators and for our lawyers. I set up an application for supervisors for lawyers to become supervisors. Before, my predecessor just shoulder tapped people and said, you're going to be the next supervisor. I wrote up a policy, and we have people who want to be supervisors apply. I urge them to go to training so that they're in a position to know what they need to do. I put in writing various policies to make sure that people understand what the expectations are. We actually now have a form of appraisal, because before, unless you were getting promoted to another level, you never were evaluated again. So now we have performance development performance appraisals where the supervisor actually sits down with a writing and talks to their employees.
Thank you. All right, this will be our last question, and we will start with Delores Carr. And this question reads, what's the greatest lesson you've learned in your career, and how has that influenced your actions?
Well, I don't know about the greatest lesson I've learned in my career, but what I've learned, and I really learned this as a judge, about the broad view I have of justice. Because as a deputy district attorney for 15 years, I saw the justice system from a certain vantage point. But then I had been a defense attorney early in my career for several years. But then when I became a judge, I had to look at the full picture, and it helped inform my sense of justice as being much more of a broad view. And I think that's very important when you look at the DA's office, where we have the ability to ruin someone's life with the stroke of a pen. Because if we file charges against you, we can ruin your life. So we have to make the right decisions, and we have to have very good decision-making ability. And I think that that 6 years on the bench has hearing thousands of cases, having to look people in the eye and say, you get to see your kids this many times, this is how much of your own money you get to spend. You learn how to really listen, and you really learn to get a lot of information, and you learn where the fairness and the justice lies, and then you learn how to look people in the eye and tell them the decision that you have to make. It's a tough job, and I've had to make some tough decisions as the district attorney, but my years on the bench really helped me prepare for that job.
Thank you. Jeff Rosen.
My mother and father taught me to be honest, to know the difference between right and wrong, and when you see an injustice, to stand up and do what's right. Because when the good people are silent, that's when bad things happen. During my time in the district attorney's office, I've worked very hard to ensure justice. Sometimes justice was a conviction and a long prison sentence, and I aggressively pursued justice to protect the community. And sometimes justice was dismissing a murder case, as I've done, because he didn't do it. The evidence sort of made it look like he might have did it, but he didn't. And reducing charges when that's in the interest of justice. And also playing by the rules. One of my first supervisors in the DA's office was Neil Kimball, and I went to him once and I was asking him a question about what to do in a case, and he said, here's the line between what's permissible and what's impermissible. It's up to you to decide how close you want to get to that line. And I always remembered that. Whenever I had a question about whether a piece of evidence should be turned over to the defense, I always erred on the side of disclosure. And that's one of the lessons that Neil Kimball taught me, and that my parents taught me, to do what's right and to seek justice. And when I'm your district attorney, that's what I'll do.
Thank you. All right, so it's time for closing statements. The candidates will each have 2 minutes, and we will start with Jeff Rosen.
About a week or two ago, I was talking to a venture capitalist to seek contribution for my campaign. And this venture capitalist said to me, I don't usually get involved in local races. I'm involved in bigger things, saving the world. And he said, what's your big idea? That's how these guys talk. What's your big idea? And I thought he maybe thought I was going to say solar or geothermal or plastics, if you remember that. So I said, my big idea is an old idea, ethics and integrity in the justice system. I'm running to restore ethics and integrity in our justice system. Unfortunately, under the current DA, there's just been a series of bad and unethical decisions. And that needs to change. And I see myself as the vehicle for that change. I'm not the only person that would be a better district attorney than the current one, but I'm the person that's running. And the reason I've gotten such broad support from police officers and defense attorneys, from prosecutors, from elected officials, from the mayor of Cupertino, the mayor of Palo Alto, and all these individuals, is because they know that I'm tough, but I'm fair. And, I just have to say, I'm not a big person, and I have a sense of humor, and so people might sort of mistake my toughness. But ask the, dozens and dozens of men that I've sent away for life at San Quentin if I was tough. And, we'd like to put what they say about me on my website, but, the FCC won't let us do that. So a leader is someone who listens, who respects others, who serves the community, who inspires confidence, shares credit, and takes responsibility. That is who I am, and that is how I will lead the district attorney's office. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Delores Carr.
So, folks, I've been a lawyer in this community for 30 years. I've been a judge, and I earned a very good reputation in my years of service. I really urge you to take a look at my website before you make a decision, because a number of things that have been said tonight and that you may have read in the paper have been spun. And take a look and see what the truth is. Because there's only one person up here who's been cited by the Court of Appeal for prosecutorial misconduct, and that's my opponent. There's only one person up here who's taking money from bail bonds company. There's only one person here who put 30 articles on his website without paying for them from the Mercury News, and, as far as I know, has failed to report them on his campaign finance statements. I urge you to look at my endorsements: Sheriff Laurie Smith, Santa Clara Police Chief Steve Lodge, and 10 police officer associations. And go back and recall the question, talk about your management experience tonight. And if you recall my opponent's answer to that question, he really talked around it, because in the 15 years he's been in the DA's office, he has no leadership or management experience. And in fact, he's never even applied to be a supervisor. So I think it's important to ask yourself, who has the qualifications and the experience to run the office, to make sure our community is safe, who's willing to make the tough decisions that sometimes have to be made. Now, he didn't tell you this tonight, but he's been saying on the campaign trail he would never challenge a judge like I did. Well, 12 DAs across the state have submitted an op-ed to the Mercury News explaining why this is not so unprecedented, why this is not un-American, but what we sometimes have to do to keep you safe. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so this concludes the candidates forum for the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. Let's take a moment and thank the candidates for participating.
Thank you. Thank you.
They will be in the room next door. They'll also have information available. I invite you to ask them more questions, and we'll take a moment, take a break, and at 8 o'clock we'll start with the candidates for the Sheriff's Office.
Lights been right.
Yes, it is.
Before we get started, I'll just remind everybody, please remember to write questions on cards. That is what this is all about, is your opportunity to ask the candidates questions. So raise your hand. We'll be happy to give you a card so you can write down those questions for them.
This is pretty cool. Huh?
Okay. All right. Well, welcome back to the next part of our candidates forum evening. Now we get to hear from the candidates from the Sheriff's Office. So with me, we have alphabetically seated Richard Calderon, Martin Monica, and Laurie Smith. According to the Sheriff's website, the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office has 586 sworn personnel and a budget of $112 million. The Sheriff's Office serves the communities of Cupertino, Los Altos Hills, Saratoga, and the unincorporated areas of the county. The Sheriff's Office also maintains contracts with the Valley Transportation Authority and the Santa Clara County Parks Department for law enforcement services, with a total county population of approximately 1.7 million people. The Sheriff's Office has a service population of about 197,000. All right, so we're going to begin with opening statements, and you will have up to 2 minutes for those statements, and we'll begin with Laurie Smith.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us and for you being here tonight. Since I've become sheriff, the Sheriff's Office has emerged as one of the preeminent law enforcement agencies in the nation. And we're distinguished for our high level of service, but also for our honesty and integrity. As public revenues decline, it's important that we continue to maintain the strong management and fiscal practices that we have in the Sheriff's Office. It really is our job to keep you safe. We're dedicated to keeping our kids out of gangs, off drugs, and in school, and for protecting our most vulnerable population from the predators. I'm talking about children and the elderly and others. We don't need any more victims. I was really pleased tonight to see one of the very, very brave young women from our De Anza case, one of our witnesses from our De Anza case that attends De Anza College, and she's here tonight. I'm glad to see her. She's one of the true heroes. Despite budget cuts, we've kept our service level high in your neighborhoods, and our crime rates remain low. We'll focus on solving problems: gangs, homelessness, mental illness, drugs. And there are many leaders who are supporting me for sheriff, and I appreciate that. We have the entire Board of Supervisors, all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, the agency that gives us our money. They have the trust and confidence in our leadership at the Sheriff's Office to all unanimously support me. My endorsements are unprecedented. I have Congressmember Zoe Lofgren, Mike Honda, former Congress member and Transportation Secretary Norm Mineta. I have most of the San Jose City Council, all the senators, state senators that touch this, many, many more leaders. And that is because of what our organization is, what we do, how we provide the services, and the professional nature of the deputy sheriffs that serve this county.
Thank you. Martin Monica.
Good evening. My background is I'm a retired chief of police with the experience to run any department. I have a letter here from not only the sheriff indicating Martin has the practical intelligence necessary to serve in any leadership position, as well as the city manager that actually oversaw and would work with me at the city that I worked at. He says he possesses genuine leadership skills. Mr. Monica has vision, insight, and energy to lead any police agency. So that's showing my ability to lead. But I think what you want to look at is the action that people will do, what I will do. I'm the only one here that has ever published any article in the area of community policing, written it, published it, and presented it in Florida to be able to bring that to the public administrators. I know Laurie talks of all the endorsements, but what I bring is endorsements of people that actually know what I've done, how I can do it, and what I've done. The endorsements she's received, if you ask them, they probably don't know what she's really done in the way of action. So I'm here to create a new environment for law enforcement, community policing, and I will challenge anybody in law enforcement that thinks we're doing community policing at the deputy's location. Now, they're not. There's approximately $100,000 in the budget for community policing. That's not a philosophy, but a program, so that's wrong. So I would bring that. I've developed programs for children before we got the buzzword of community policing, and developed it at Berryessa School District to work with the children. My kids went through the school district here and at no time ever saw the sheriff, let alone a deputy. So we need to change that where the actual sheriff is out in the community, working with the community and not seeking large endorsements and support. We have to go back to the community, and that's what I want to do. The other area is that I'm a good motivator for people. They follow me, and they have within the department I was at and even in San Jose PD. And that's what I plan to do in the Sheriff's Department to make a change to the community policing area. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, Women's League of Voters. My name is Richard Calderon, and I do seek your support. I have more experience than the other candidates in enforcement, community policing, community collaboration, and investigative work. I am proud of my 30 years of experience with the San Jose Police Department, during which I received multiple community awards for my enforcement and community policing actions. I served as the Chief of Police in Gustine, and while there, I was the chair of the Police Chief and Sheriff's Association. As a police captain, I was the commander of the Western Division, and I was also responsible for the 1 million residents of San Jose when I was in command. I was responsible for 220 personal staff, and during any evening when the officers were out, I was responsible for approximately 240 officers. I was responsible for multiple gang task forces, other task forces, and I have the experience to work with multiple agencies from federal government, local agencies as well. With this, I also must tell you that 34 years ago, my brother was murdered in San Jose, and that inspired me to work to resolve youth crime and youth gang issues, and I'm still motivated, and my passion continues. It's time for a new sheriff in town. As we talk, I'm going to provide you with additional information to let you know how I am the best candidate available to you, and I will serve you better from the experience that I have. One of the key points I'm going to mention is the $8 million of lawsuits that the Sheriff's Department is responsible for, and I hold the incumbent responsible for those $8 million you paid for. It comes out of your butt. It comes out of your tax money. It does not come out of the budget. So the incumbents can speak of how she's come within budget. If they were to account for the civil lawsuits, the money that's been paid out, she would not be within budget. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now it's time for questions. The candidates will each have a minute and a half to answer. And because there's three of you, I'm going to kind of rotate around so you each get a chance to go first. So the first question will start with Martin Monica. And this question reads, Santa Clara County works for and protects the cities of Cupertino, Saratoga, and Los Altos Hills. What do you bring to keep this good working relationship we have with these cities?
Well, it's true, but also the Sheriff's Department is responsible for the county. Everybody votes for the sheriff, so to not also support other communities is wrong. But to come back to the question, I was a father here with my kids at the school, and I got a PTA award for working within the community. I have that connection, and will keep going and even increase what's going on here by the way of community policing. There is no community policing. It's not a program. It's a philosophy from the top down. If the chief sheriff does not implement that, it does not work. And we can argue all we want. But if you go back to the research in the other areas of police officers and departments, you're going to see it's different. I would bring that in to actually create more of a community policing using problem-solving techniques through what they call the SARA program, which is an acronym for scanning, analysis, responding, and then an assessment. If you don't do that, you're not working with the community. And during the time that I was a police officer, I would use that same method, and we would reduce crime. We would increase public relations with the police in a positive way, and we get more involvement by the community. If the community isn't brought in, if the sheriff does not come to you on a continuous basis and interact with you, they're failing their job. And that's what I'll do, work with you, not send lieutenants, captains, and so forth. The sheriff will be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Okay. My experiences in working with task forces and other agencies throughout the county is what I will work with to actually bring together all the chiefs of police throughout the county. I will participate actively and attend the Police Chief and Sheriff's Association for the county, during which I will meet with, develop protocol, and training for all of the police chiefs in the county. The incumbent does not participate with that organization. I will also actively participate with emergency preparedness. We need someone in the Sheriff's Office who works with the Emergency Operations Center to prepare for a major emergency, a terrorist attack, a natural disaster, and with this then work with the federal government as well to use funds to purchase equipment that can be used mutually and therefore continue to provide regionalization so we can purchase equipment that will be used by all agencies. It's important to do so, and I will do that. With this, you're going to have my experience in handling investigative units and working in investigations, so there will not be another mistake like that which happened with the De Anza rape, where the crime scene unit did not go out till 12 to 14 hours after the incident. It's my experience. It's what I can offer to the deputies on a day-to-day basis in collaboration, cooperation with all community members, and a style of community policing that is important for everyone now.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. The Santa Clara County works for and protects the cities of Cupertino, Saratoga, and Los Altos Hills. What do you bring to keep this good working relationship we have with these cities?
I think the working relationship is probably the most important thing that we have. I basically work for 3 city councils, 3 city managers, and we provide a high level of service. There have been surveys done of the city of Cupertino, and we rank among the highest in city services. We do a great job here. We also have a great relationship with the city council members of each of the cities, with the city manager of each of the cities. We bring a lot, we're trusted, we do a good job for them, and we also do it at a much lower cost. When you compare Saratoga, that's the sheriff's office, and Los Gatos, that has their own police department, they're similar in population, and Saratoga pays about $4 million a year for their police services. Los Gatos pays $12 million for their police services. So not only do we have an excellent relationship, but we're very cost effective and with the highest level of service possible. We've got great men and women in the sheriff's office that provide the services, and the relationships are what's important. I have the endorsement of the entire Board of Supervisors, but I also have the majority of each of the city council members in Cupertino, Saratoga. I also have endorsements from Los Altos Hills. And we have a great relationship. We'll continue to build on that relationship.
Thank you. Okay, now our next question, I'm actually going to combine two questions because they're very related, and we're going to start with Richard Calderon. Okay. So the question is, can you please list your major endorsements, and particularly in Cupertino, and also how much money have you raised, not counting loans, for this campaign?
Okay. First, my major endorsement is the Mayor of San Jose. I have the County Employees Management Association, so all managers in the county understand as well there's a need for a change. Also have the National Latino Peace Officers Association state chapter, the Sunnyvale Public Safety Officers Association, the Mountain View Peace Officers Association. I have the State Mobile Home Owners Association. Because of previous work, I've also engaged with them. And I also have the previous DSA president for the County Sheriff's Department, the DSA for the Santa Cruz County, and unlimited numbers of individuals. And I also must note that I came into this race late. It wasn't until February 1st that I announced, and many of the endorsements that were given to the incumbent were previously given. So with this, that is my endorsement. In regards to the money that I've raised, I have raised approximately, guesstimating here now, about $145,000, of which I and proudly say that I also contributed $100,000 myself to this campaign to ensure that we have a new sheriff in town.
Thank you. Martin Monica.
In the area of endorsements in Cupertino, in the area, I don't have any politicians. I really didn't seek out the politicians. I feel that most politicians, it's more of looks compared to actually understanding who you are. So I have people in the community that I know, that I've known for many years, that support me. So I have many people. I don't have endorsements from this location as far as big names, as they call it. I think, again, is if you look at where I've received letters from kids, I think that are important. They support me and their parents support me. So when you start talking about these endorsements, you have to also look at what are they worth and what are they doing for our community. As far as money, I haven't raised a lot. I'm not really out looking for a lot of money. I'm doing more of a grassroots. We've raised under $1,000, but I have a campaign manager, a new one, that has even, in fact, told me that we need to start getting more money, and so I'm working on that. But just go back to the endorsements. I don't have any from any of the people here. You got to remember that in the position Laurie's been for 12 years, if she doesn't get the endorsements from the people here, there's a problem. So I wouldn't even go after those endorsements. It would be kind of silly, don't you think? So I have unions that support me. I have a former mayor of Palo Alto that endorses me that the paper was kind of shocked about. So it depends on the type of person you are and who you talk to. But if I was in her position, I would have all these as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
I think endorsements are very important. It speaks to the trust that the elected officials have in you. They don't give endorsements lightly. And I have bipartisan, unprecedented bipartisan support, not only most of the elected Democrats in this county, but also the governor and the lieutenant governor. And I think it's very important because it speaks to trust, it speaks to the job you're doing. And I don't think it's frivolous at all. As far as other endorsements, I have some campaign flyers out there. If you can go to my website, it's www.sherifflauriesmith.com. It lists the endorsements. I have many, many organizations, the firefighters, the probation union, the Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm very proud of that because the Deputy Sheriff's Association did a mail-out ballot to the members, And with 4 candidates at that time, I got almost 78% of the endorsement. That's the most important to me, is knowing that the people inside have trust and confidence in what we're doing and the direction we're going. I think that the deputies in their endorsement really said, we don't want these guys. We have a leader that we trust and that we have confidence in, and we're headed the right direction. That's what the deputy sheriff's endorsement means to me. And I just have too many to mention right now, but I'm very, very proud of the endorsements and the confidence they have in our agency.
Thank you. All right, this next question, we will start with Laurie Smith. And it's actually, once again, 2 questions. So the first one is, please give your previous experience in law enforcement, and then along with that, what other experience do you have related to managing a large police department?
Previous experience in law enforcement. I'm a relative rookie because I only have about 37 years on the department. And I've been sheriff for about 12 years of that 37 years, almost 37. And before that, I was second in command for probably about 9 years. But I've worked every division in the department. I was a sex crime investigator. I worked for patrol for a number of years, vice, undercover operations. I have a very, very wide range of, in fact, one of my former narcotics partners, Pat Dwyer's in the audience. I've led the organization. We've been successful. We've emerged as a top law enforcement agency, and I'm very proud of that. Going back to the other question, because I forgot part 2 of the other question.
Part 2 is, what other experience related to managing a large police department?
Managing. I have a master's degree in management. I've been to California's Command College. So I have not only the experience, but also the training and education that goes with it. With regard to the money, I didn't touch on that. I'm not sure exactly what my totals are, but since March 18th, the last filing period, I've raised about $100,000 since that time period. And so it's added to whatever my previous total was.
Thank you. All right, so Martin Monica. Go next.
In the area of managing, as a chief of police in a small department, I had no support staff like Laurie has. It was myself and doing everything, secretarial and so forth. So I have the background. I think you have to also look at this in respect to Laurie. When she first became sheriff, she had no background as the top cop. So she did not have that ability to understand what you were responsible for. As second in command, you're still not in charge. As the assistant chief, the undersheriff, you're still not in charge. So Rich and I come here with the background of being a former chief of police and doing a good job, I think a great job. So I have the ability, not only from the experience more than most people get when they get into her position, because they have all these other people doing the jobs. I had to do the budget, I had to do the secretarial, I had to do the memos, I had to do the grants. I did all of those and had to actually submit them to the feds or the local level. So the background I have, as far as the size, not as big, but it comes down to how you can run your organization and use your people around you. And I have a lot of experience working with people and working them to where they get the job done. And that's what can be done in this department. So any one of us can run the department. It depends on how you want it run, not who runs it, but how.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Yes. As the captain of San Jose Police Department, I was a commander, and during that time, I was responsible for 1 million community members. Again, as I've said before, 220 and times even more so at one time. That is much larger than the staff that I'd be responsible for at any one time at the Sheriff's Department, and many more people than the incumbent is responsible for. With this, I was responsible for several task forces. One was the countywide physical and mental abuse task force for seniors, where we provide a protocol, engage in investigation, and the prevention of abuse of seniors. I also engaged in a countywide task force involving federal agencies, state agencies, to investigate and prevent the fraudulent identification, use of identification and other documents to prevent identity theft. I was also with Pat Dwyer. We worked with several task forces, the gang task force, in putting together multiple protocols and task force studies. So I do appreciate Pat Dwyer being in the audience. And with that, I have much more experience in investigations than the incumbent does. I would ask, again, for consideration and put together a countywide gang task force, which we need in this county.
Thank you. Our next question, we will start with Martin Monica, and this question is, please tell me about the crime problems in Saratoga and Cupertino that the sheriff is not addressing, and what would you do to address them?
Well, let me just, in the Los Gatos Hills, where it's the sheriff's jurisdiction, we were at a forum, and they informed us of concerns that weren't being addressed by the sheriff, the deputies, anybody there. And I'd have to say some of that would probably lead off into those other areas in regards to motorcycle issues. They're doing meth labs up there and selling and planting marijuana and destroying the environment. So I think what you need to do to find out what goes on in the community is you have to be out there. I'm not talking about the sergeant, the lieutenant, or whatever. The sheriff has to be out there and talk. The sheriff has to walk it and see what's going on. To say you have all these meetings is counterproductive from a management standpoint and from school. You find out that, in fact, most meetings are a waste of time. So to find out what the problems are is to be out there and talk and ask what's going on, not only with the kids, the seniors, and the teachers, and everybody involved out there. And that's how you can make the change and to understand what the problems are out there. Is it car speeding? Is it graffiti? Is it alcohol drinking? Those type of activities that we need to address. And if you don't go out there, you'll never make it. Laurie hasn't been out for 12 years with the community the way you should as a leader. And that's what I'm going to do, is be out there. So when you see me out there, you go, I have this issue. Let's sit down and talk about it, because my concern is with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Do you have burglaries here in Saratoga and Cupertino? When I worked in San Jose PD in charge of the burglary grand theft unit, we were investigating together and worked with some investigators from the deputies, the sheriff's department, to resolve some daytime invasions that were occurring where there were sometimes kids, but a group of people in a van. Sometimes they were called gypsies, that were going in and actually stealing large TVs. They were burglarizing residences that were being allowed basically to be empty during the day. And it took a great deal of investigation and coordination. We were working with the Sheriff's Department to get them involved and participated in it. Eventually, there was one of our officers, a retired Sergeant Wiedner, that located a person that was the lead person in the gypsy burglaries. So burglaries need to have greater attention here. And I'll say also, there was a robbery, murder that occurred of a senior citizen, and in that case, the investigation was concluded by Fremont, where they came in here and arrested the suspect with some assistance from the Sheriff's Department. But also tell you that intervention with the gang youth and youth who are at risk also need to be considered. And I know for a fact that there's a great deal of intervention that has not been done in the high schools in the area with gang youth and youth who are becoming involved in gang activity. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
This will probably be a pretty quick answer, because we do know what the crime problems are in Cupertino and Saratoga and the cities that we serve. And we address them. We do target enforcement when there are a lot of burglaries or auto burglaries. We focus on that. We not only, I mentioned the cost that we provide to the cities, but we also have among the lowest crime rates in the county and the cities that we serve. So we are very careful about the crime trends, what they are. We're very responsive. We do great investigations when there is a major crime like the homicide, and yes, we had that solved. And we work very closely with all community groups, the schools, the neighborhood associations, the Neighborhood Watch. We do a lot of programs for kids, a lot of programs for seniors, and I think I mentioned earlier, but the cities are very, very satisfied with not only our level of service, but the success that we have at curbing crime problems. We're on it. We know what it is.
Thank you. All right, for our next question, we'll start with Richard Calderon, and this one reads, how are you going to handle staffing and keep a balanced budget knowing foreseeable cutbacks?
I'm going to examine the budget. I'm going to look at all areas of the Sheriff's Department to determine where waste is occurring. One place that I've already examined is the top heaviness of the command staff. There are 15 captains at the Sheriff's Department and only 16 lieutenants. Any other agency would not have that type of lieutenant to captain ratio. We're going to have to examine that and determine where. Perhaps captains are doing work that could be done by others. There's also an examination of every unit that I'm going to engage in with the staff. Ask them specifically how the budget could be changed, where waste is occurring, and perhaps duplication. And I'll even also consider the use of take-home vehicles to determine how, in fact, only those that are truly needed by somebody who's going to be responding in the nighttime for a specific need then should have a vehicle. There's also the need to examine how I could assist with the Department of Corrections and the cost savings for the jails. I'm going to look at other best practices, and there are several. I'll give you one example. Texas has a cost of $8 per day for medical costs. When I've done an examination of the DOC at this time, I believe the cost is somewhere around $25 per day. That could be changed as well.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
The Sheriff's Office is unique. It's not like city police agencies. We do what city police agencies do, and then we do a lot more. I'm the only candidate that has any experience in the Sheriff's Office. Some of the things that we do that are unusual are our civil division. We do all the evictions in the county. There's several things that we do countywide. We seize and sell real property. We have the courts. We have a relationship with the jail. And I'm the only one that has that experience. Another thing that we manage is the coroner's office, which I've had a lot of experience in law enforcement, but I haven't done an autopsy yet. I leave that for the doctors. But we've been fiscally sound within the Sheriff's Office. We've taken about $16 million in cuts since 2004, and there hasn't been a decrease in services. I know the Sheriff's Office. I'm experienced in the Sheriff's Office. We are fiscally sound. Our management practices are solid. So what we're looking at now is we're looking at programs that can actually save the county money. We're looking at some mental health initiatives where we believe that it will save the county hospitals and the county mental facilities money. There are several initiatives we're looking at like that. We're also looking at more technology. Can we track registered sex offenders using technology? There's a lot of technology we can use. We will come in budget every year in the future. We have always. We're looking at combining services with the jail, looking at Valley Medical Center, security. There's a lot of very, very exciting things happening in the Sheriff's Office right now that will save money.
Thank you. Martin, Monica?
I think it's crucial to understand the budget and to what's going on inside the budget. Just because the supervisors give you money doesn't mean the budget is being done correctly. Anybody that can understand a budget would understand that there are problems in this current budget, and I have right here documented, and I can give it to Laurie because she didn't understand it the last form. In the police academy that she calls one of her greatest accomplishments is wasting millions of dollars. It's in the budget. I have it here, and you can look at it. She's lost probably, so far, $30 million. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's a lot of money. So if you start actually looking at the budget and understanding it, you can make the change. If you create a performance budget compared to a line item budget, you're going to make sure the performance on what you're doing is have a good outcome, and then you can change it. The other thing, in what Rich was saying, you have to look at the budget. There's overtime wasted there. In the administrative staff there's 8 non-sworn people, and they're given $500,000 a year in overtime. That's almost $64,000 a year they have in overtime to do secretarial work and so forth. I don't know about you, but that's a waste. So before you can go on and do all these other nice programs to get money, you need to look at the budget and understand it. Everybody here has a budget at home. You look at it, you make sure it's on task, the incoming and outgoing. I have a copy of the budget here, so there's no, thank you.
Thank you. All right, for our next question, we'll start with Laurie Smith, and this question reads, what makes you a leader to have the deputies believe in you?
When I first became sheriff, I had a very, very clear vision of where we needed to be, where we were at the time, and then we set the roadmap collectively in the sheriff's office. We've achieved a lot. We're recognized as one of the finest law enforcement agencies in the nation. I'm very proud every day of the work the men and women do at the sheriff's office. I feel privileged to work with them. They don't work for me. My job is to support what they do. Because of the overwhelming support that I've received from the Deputy Sheriff's Association, that's the most important thing to me, because that's confidence and trust in your leadership. At the same time, I'm very tough. We do strong disciplines. We hold people accountable. We have a very disciplined organization. And because of that, there's a lot to leadership, and I don't think I can talk about it in 2 minutes, but leadership is important, and to have people willing to work with you and to make the place better and to continually provide better public services, public safety services is I think, really a tribute. And I'm really very honored to have their support. And I think together we can do some great things in the future.
Thank you. Martin Monica.
I think in any organization, there's always a change. When Laurie leaves, the new sheriff will come in, and the deputies will follow them as well in some capacity. Prior sheriffs, they followed as well. So it's not so much as the following, it's how they follow and how they respect you. And I feel, as my background in law enforcement, the deputies have seen me work, that I would be able to lead by example. They'll see me and say, look, he's doing this, and I'm going to follow him. The other area is, it's not just the deputies as a leader, it's the community. If you forget the community and just deal with the law enforcement community, you've lost a lot. You lost the kids, the seniors, and so forth. As a leader, you go out to that community. You work with that community. Just because the deputies are going to be nice to you and like you doesn't mean you're getting to all the people you need to. And that's what I'm going to be doing, to come out as a leader where people know and understand me and can talk to me. Because if you don't do that, you're not leading. You're being followed by a certain group, and it should be everybody here. We're all in it together. And as a leader, you come out and work with everybody here, not just one group. And when you don't do that, you fail. And that's what I'll do, is come and lead and work with people, and we'll work as a team. Teamwork is the key here. I'm not going to be the mean person ordering this and that. We're going to work as a team, a collaborative. And then when you have to get tough, you get tough. But if you don't start working as a team, that's why we're losing. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Yes. What's really important is for any organization to have a leader that provides a vision statement that's in line with them. I'm going to have a department-wide meeting and speak with my command staff to determine where we're going. What is the vision? What we see our role, and that's going to be based as well, seeking input from the community, meeting with you and others, and also representing the entire county, not just those cities where there is a contract. Because as I said earlier, it's extremely important to take care of many of the issues and assist the other cities that are also in the county. So one of the most important priorities for me is going to be public safety. I'm going to seek that input from my staff, how we can better provide public safety for you. One of the most important ways, as I've said about a gang task force, it is said by the FBI that 80% of all crime is committed by gangs. We have a serious problem at this time. 51% of the youth in San Jose who are Hispanic will not graduate. It's up about 60% of the Hispanic youth in the county. And with this, 80% of the youth in juvenile hall are Hispanic. So I'm going to create Latino mentor programs and also Black mentor programs to focus on improving the success of the youth, because youth crime problems with the schools and working with the schools is going to be extremely important. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for our next question, we'll start with Martin Monica, and this question is, the population in Santa Clara County has diversified ethnically, age, and mobility. What have you done to show leadership in this area?
Well, I think, number one, I've learned a second language. I speak Spanish. And so that large community, I can communicate just like Rich can. I think the other area, as a leader and being able to go out to the community, I was with the the Hindu community last week, and they support me. So it's to go out and talk to people like people, and go to all the groups, because we're all here together. If you select one group, then you fail as a leader. So I have my hand out to many, many different groups. I've been working with some groups over in San Jose. We dealt with an issue where they were selling alcohol. I was the only police officer, law enforcement, that helped them, and we stopped it. There was another area that I was working with the group, and they were putting in a new funeral home in the community by a school. I helped them to stop it. We worked as a team. So I'm out there. You can talk to a lot of people out there, and they're going to say, yeah, Mr. Monica has been out and talked to a lot of different groups, because we're all here together. We're a community, and that's what we as law enforcement need to start realizing. If we don't work as a community and segregate ourselves from certain groups, then we lose, and then problems happen, and we can't address them. So I've been out there a lot, working with all groups. Whatever groups out there I've talked to, worked with, and told them my philosophy. And I get a lot of good support and response. So that's what I've done, and I keep doing. Like I said, learn Spanish, and I might learn another language to work with other community members. I think that's important. So that's what I've done, and I will keep doing in an effort to bring community together. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Yes. I am a subject matter expert for posts in the state of California on cultural diversity, racial profiling, sexual harassment, and hate crime. I have been a subject matter expert for more than 20 years and have taught on the subject in the South Bay Regional Academy, San Mateo. I've taught in Oakland and Alameda. I've taught in Santa Cruz. I've actually gone up and taught in Montana. I've taught in Wairika, Los Angeles, and I've not only spoken about it and taught the class, but I've also helped put together the training that's used statewide. Several of the officers or deputies who work in the Sheriff's Department were probably in a class of mine before the academy got split off. With this, I've also worked in my campaign to reach out to the Persian community, the Chinese American community, the Vietnamese American community, the Hispanic community, and I have their support in this campaign. I'm reaching out to all members of the community because it's important. That is my mindset, to address all the concerns for everyone in the community. The Hispanic community, I speak Vietnamese, I speak sign language, and I speak a few words in some other languages. With this, it's going to be my diversified experiences as well as my experience in diversity that's going to make me the better candidate. I enjoy the class, and I've always had a great time with it. I put together the last video that was a statewide training for that topic. So that's my experience.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
Thanks. We are very, very fortunate in this county to have the level of diversity that we have. And not only is it an ethnic diversity, but there's such geographic differences in this county. And being the sheriff's office and having responsibility for many functions that span the entire county of 1.8 million people, we have to be very different in how we provide services. First of all, I think you start with hiring. And our hiring, we have raised the level of people who have diverse backgrounds, speak different languages. We're always looking for additional women because we have a difficult time getting the women's numbers up in law enforcement. That's pretty characteristic. And Asians, we're always looking there. Otherwise, we pretty much mirror the workforce demographics in this county. And we work very hard at that, and we have hired some extraordinarily wonderful people that have the language skills. Also, we do work with many organizations, many different organizations representing different ethnicities. And I also wanted to talk really briefly about diverse in the population. We deal a lot with the Farm Bureau and the ag at the southern end of the county, and we have high tech. So we have people assigned to rural crimes, we have people assigned to high tech. It's such a great, diverse community, and we're fortunate in the sheriff's office that we span the entire county, and it's something that we enjoy doing, and I think we do a good job at.
Thank you. All right, the next question, we'll start with Richard Calderon, and this one is, what sets you apart from the other opponents? Example A, character qualities, B, experience.
Definitely is experience. I have more experience in investigative work, working in task forces than the other two candidates. I have extreme knowledge on gang prevention, intervention, and also enforcement. The mayor of San Jose endorses me, and his words were because he knows that I can work countywide to resolve many of the gang issues in the county. I also have the experience that's just mentioned in regards to diversity. I am very knowledgeable of how to interact with all community groups, and I'm doing so already in my campaign. I also have the experience of working with seniors. I've also worked with a women's group. I think it's extremely
Test.
Is it working? Try it again.
Test.
Is it still working?
No.
No, why don't you go, Sheriff? Thank you.
Start the timer back.
Okay. Test. Okay. I'm working with other women's groups as well, and I'm going to continue to do that because I believe one of the most important things we need to work on is a reduction of domestic violence, and it's created a new phenomenon that some people may not be aware of, but it's called a dating violence. Some of the young youth now, when they're dating, apparently believe it's okay to beat their girlfriends. Something I've done is created and helped work with a Latino Youth Leadership Conference, and with that, we'll speak to young men and tell them how to behave, not only when they're dating, but also as they grow up, because they need some direction. They need some leadership training, and they need to be shown how to act like men. With this as well, it's important to advise the ladies on how to report incidents of the sort to stop it.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
And tell me again what the question was, I'm sorry.
Yes, what sets you apart from the other opponents? For example, character qualities, experience?
Great. Well, I do have the most management experience, certainly, and law enforcement experience, but I'm often asked what really distinguishes me from the other candidates. And unlike my opponents, I'm not retired. I plan to work for a long time. And unlike my opponents, I wasn't fired from my last police job. And in fact, I've never been fired from a job. And unlike my opponents, I'm not just looking for a job. I have a great career in the sheriff's office. I will continue to work until I believe that I'm not effective and move it on. I'm a proven leader. I have the credentials to show that, and I'm not a failed leader. We need good quality leadership. We're in very difficult economic times. It's not the time now for on-the-job training, and it's not the time to take chances on someone who has failed in previous jobs.
Thank you. All right, Martin Monica.
Well, I'd like to just clarify. Laurie didn't explain to you to the extent she said we were fired. I guess she supports child molesters. I was removed from my position because I arrested a child molester that was a police sergeant married to a city councilwoman. So go figure what happens there. When they come to me and say, Chief, if you keep going with the investigation, and let me just say, we've said this 3 or 4 times at forums, so Laurie knows that I arrested a child molester, and it really gets to be, to me, unprofessional when she attacks us like this, when in fact she knows I arrested a child molester. Unless you agree upon it to let them go, then you can go on Laurie's side. But because of that, as an at-will employee, it's an at-will, it's not being fired, it's being let go because you didn't perform what they wanted to let the child molester go. So as far as being a proven leader, I think I've done it more than anybody else here in law enforcement. They wouldn't give up their job. They would let the child be molested. I'm not going to do that. So as far as a leader, I'm set apart from Laurie and everybody else here. As far as being retired, so we're saying now, if anybody here that's retired, if you try to get another job, that's not a good thing. I think that's wrong. And so we're here to bring our experience and training to make the department different and better. That's what you do with new people and change. So Laurie has to understand that. If she doesn't, she's not a proven leader, but she uses these negative attacks on us without telling the truth. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will start with Laurie Smith. The deaths of 2 bicyclists was a terrible tragedy. The deputy responsible for working, I'll give that to you again. The deputy responsible was working a 12-hour shift. Do you believe 12-hour shifts are a good thing? And what has been done to prevent such incidents, or what should be done to prevent such incidents?
First of all, it was a horrible accident. It was just a very difficult time in the sheriff's office, and obviously, my sympathies go very deeply to the families. 12-hour shifts in law enforcement have become pretty much of the norm. Many agencies have them. We worked in the past with Stanford sleep researchers before this accident, and NASA had a sleep clinic at NASA at Moffett, and we spent a lot of time working with them. And we've also done training on sleep and fatigue with the Sheriff's Office. What we've done since the accident is we are making it available to all deputies in the department, and we've put in thousands of hours of training deputies in the issues of fatigue. The sleep professionals that we talk with, because we did examine whether the 12-hour shifts are something that we should continue, and in dealing with the sleep professionals and the fatigue professionals, they don't believe it was an impact. It's more what you do during your off-duty time and how you sleep and how you recover from fatigue that's important. And it was just a tragedy in the Sheriff's Office, and I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Martin Monica.
I'm going to address the 12-hour shift. I'm a researcher. I've written, published different articles. The 12-hour shift is already documented. Laurie was at a meeting 2 weeks prior to that accident indicating that it's not good for the officers, that it is a liability, and there's increase in accidents that occur. So as far as the studies she's talking about, I'd like to see those studies and look at them and analyze them. But if you go on the internet and you talk to other agencies, you find, in fact, it's not a norm, but they're trying to get away from it because of the critical situation that occurred. The other area here, the tragedy, I think, could have been avoided if we didn't hire somebody that has a prior history of drinking and driving. That's what a leader does, and make those hard decisions, even though this young man's dad worked for the deputies. So they permitted somebody to come in that I, as a sheriff or a chief, would not hire because of the background. You have to take a stand and say, I'm not going to hire child molesters, I'm not going to hire drunk drivers, because we go out and arrest them. And so if you bring those people in, you're going to create those problems. And I believe two things happened. She had the 12-hour shift. She knew that they shouldn't have had it. That created the problem. And you bring in a guy that's been arrested for drunk driving. I don't know if you want somebody like that coming to your house. I don't. I'm an officer, chief, and I believe in justice. But if you start hiring people when you have so many other qualified applicants, you lose. And we did. We lost 2 bicyclists. I think it could have been avoided. And it was because Laurie failed to get rid of the 12-hour shift and to hire somebody that has prior experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Yes, I want to be clear about this. The deputy fell asleep. It's here in the press release. It's part of the $8 million of lawsuits that you, the taxpayers, have paid out. And the lawsuits associated to this have not been, are not over. There are more pending. Why? Probably because they know of the training that the incumbent went through. It was a command officer from CHP, Gordon Graham, who had a risk management class and told her and other command staff, 12-hour shift is too long. People will doze off, and it happened. It's sad. It's more sad that it was a failure on the incumbent's part to take any action when she was given the information. With this, that same type of failure is what's happening with the other $8 million, total $8 million of lawsuits that have occurred. It is saddening. Something I'm going to take on when I get there is to look at all of those lawsuits, examine why they occurred, determine what policy changes are going to be needed, ensure then supervision is going to then be provided so the same type of mistakes do not occur. Again, even with like the Deanza rape incident, that's a poor judgment to determine that you will not send out a crime scene unit till 12 or 14 hours after a 17-year-old was gang raped. These are the type of failures that the incumbent has engaged in, and this is the type of changes that are needed. I'll give this for you, Laurie, right there.
No, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so now our next question, we will start with Martin Monica. Please speak to the benefits of the partnership between the Sheriff's Department and school districts.
Oh, wow. I'm an avid believer in that. I'm a teacher as well. I'm completing my credential, and I see all the kids from elementary to middle school, and I don't see police, deputies, and so forth at the level they should be. I think it's That's where you start working with the kids to stay out of gangs. The idea to have these task force, they're all right to get the guys that are already out there, but we have to look as a doctor and start saying, where are we going to cure this? Are we going to go over here and it's not going to be cured if I go way out here and do my task force? We need to develop what they call a committee, which is long-term, and work with the schools. The schools are where the little ones are at. Support the parents, the family as well. The family is a crucial part in this whole game here. If we don't get out and work as a team with the schools, with the parents, with the teachers, we lose. And that's, as a sheriff, you should be out there at the schools. As I teach with the little ones from 1st grade up to 7th and 8th grade, I tell them, when I win, I will be over there and talk with you. And that's what we need to do. We're too much over here, and we have these endorsements, but what about the kids? They're the future. If we don't work with the schools that know what goes on to prevent these crimes and let them get into the gangs, we lose. All the task force in the world, all the committees, all your support by the politicians is not going to stop it. We need to start with the schools, and law enforcement needs to be part of that partnership and not just the ones telling you what to do, but work with you as a team. Too often. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
We have several partnerships with schools that we're very proud of. Several of the things that we do are programs within the schools. We do every 15 minutes. We do a teen academy, a youth academy, where they go through law enforcement training. Many, many programs with schools all over the county, whether it's in our unincorporated area or in our contract cities. We also have school resource officers in our contract city schools. But one of the things that I'm very proud of is we have a relationship with the County Office of Education where we have deputies in the alternative schools, and that works very well. The County Office of Education is very happy with the service that we provide, and sometimes those are difficult kids to work with, but it's a great relationship, it's a great partnership. We also have another partnership with the colleges, and the police academy was mentioned earlier, but one of the things that I'm proud of is we have a relationship with three junior college districts, De Anza Foothill, West Valley Mission, and Gavilan. And we have a contractual relationship with them where we share some of the revenue to the college, so our training costs are kept very low, and we're able to do regional training for all law enforcement agencies through the basic academy and through our continued officer training, the training that officers are required to do. We do a great amount of training for other agencies through this partnership.
Thank you. Richard Calderon.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Could you please speak to the benefits of the partnership between the Sheriff's Department and school districts?
It's crucial. I've said that I'm going to begin a county-wide gang task force, and the focus of that task force will be in the schools. If you read the strategic action plan from the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force, which I helped put together as a co-chair, the school is the focal point. It is there that you bring in parents, community-based organizations, probation officers, other law enforcement officers to meet with the school representatives and speak of the students, to discuss what's happening with them, how to provide them services, bring in intervention, prevention, social services. This is where there's another disaster. The unincorporated school, Clara, had two 15-year-olds that shot a 12-year-old. That is a school that the incumbent is responsible for, and it was determined there was no intervention or prevention efforts there. It wasn't until after the shooting of that 12-year-old that somebody in the mayor's office asked the questions, and now there's some efforts there. The incumbent is absent from the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force, and there has been no countywide gang task force. I've talked to many other law enforcement officials throughout the county, and they're yearning for a countywide gang task force to engage in prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And with that, I will do that for all of you, because it will also be beneficial to everyone. Be a reduction of crime. It'll actually be a reduction of cost to incarcerate the kids, and a reduction of loss of lives. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it is time for closing statements. I've run us a little tighter than I'm supposed to, so I'm going to have to cut down on the amount of time on the closing statements. If we could do a minute and a half instead of 2, I appreciate your flexibility on this. Richard Calderon, you're welcome to go first.
Okay. Yes, when we spoke of endorsements, the incumbent spoke of being endorsed by Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's a video where Arnold speaks of the hours and days and the great amount of time that the incumbent has put into his campaign, going throughout the state to assist him in running for office. My question, this should be the question of all others, is was she on vacation during that time? Did she take time off? I'm seriously concerned that she was actually doing this while you were paying her salary. With this, let me add, here's another time I'll give this to you, Laurie. It states there from the city manager of Gustine that this was not a disciplinary action against Richard Calderon. It was a buyout of the contract. But the incumbent has chosen to be dishonest on various occasions. She was dishonest with the Silicon Valley Association of Republican Women and denied quitting the Police Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, yet that same day at a PORAC meeting, she admitted. It's been several times. She did that again yesterday, and it's embarrassing and it's shameful when the top law enforcement official in the county cannot be honest. I will be honest. I will be accountable to you. You'll see me out in the community. I'll be working with you in the schools. I will be principled. I will not lie for any other reason whatsoever because it is improper. I will also be fiscally responsible. I will enjoy working with you. I will work with the schools to reduce gang violence, and I thank you for your support.
Thank you. Martin Monica.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's been kind of an exciting campaign where the current incumbent has to lash out at us when she should just talk about what she's accomplished and what she's going to do. And that's what I try to do, but when I get attacked, I have to at least respond. And let me just say real quick on the police academy, there's a net cost of almost $2.5 million a year. They make no money on that. We have a good academy up at Evergreen. We don't need two academies, one. But let's go back onto what I'm going to do. I am an expert in community policing. There's not too many people that know how to do it. They can say it, they can bring it up, but they're not sure. I'm going to bring the philosophy in, not a program like a little program here and there. We have to develop the philosophy. San Jose doesn't do it. They have a program, and I'll argue with the chief on that too. Done it a couple of times, and I beat him, so that's good. I think what we need to do is bring increased communications between the community and the sheriff, and that's through town hall meetings, where you actually start getting out there talking and understanding people so you can make informed decisions. A policy being made without the proper decision, just like you have here, you're going to make the wrong decision. The other thing I'd want to do is definitely look at the budget, which is a key part of the whole department. If you don't know what's going on in the budget, and I would get an outside agency to do a forensics investigation to make sure you have everything that you need or you can move around because, thank you.
Thank you. Laurie Smith.
We're nearing the end of the campaign, and the absentee ballots are out. I know some of you have probably voted, and we've done many campaign forums, and in every forum, there's been misinformation that's been put out, and I definitely will give them the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps they're just misinformed. No one doubts the quality of the men and women that work for the sheriff's office, the job that we do. We're tough on crime, but we treat individuals with respect, and we do the job right, and I take issue with anyone who says that we do not. The next 4 years are going to be very difficult. We're all facing difficulties economically. It's with everyone, and there are a lot of exciting things going on in the sheriff's office right now, things where we'll be able to make improvements, be able to save money, and actually to be able to provide you better services. The election is almost here, and I would appreciate if you would take the time to learn about the candidates, look at their websites, and encourage all your friends to vote. And remind them, of course, to vote for me, if you would, please. And I've appreciated being here tonight. Thank you very much. And I would very respectfully ask for your vote on June 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. And this concludes our candidates forum. Thank you to my fellow league members for helping to make this possible, and most of all, thank you very much for joining us. Good night. participate.